Yes, indeed, ladies and gentlemen, it is opening day, but there are other things taking place in the sports world. And look, we've done a lot of Sweet 16 conversation, hitting the futures on DraftKings Sportsbook with Sam Ostry. Now, joining me live on the Gambler stream because we did have a firing. A head coach in Philadelphia sports was removed from his gig earlier today. John Tortorella out, hired, I believe, in June of 2022, I want to say was the case, because Larry Henry Jr. is joining us right now. I know that because I had to look up the date, Larry, because immediately when Torts was hired, everybody said the same thing. Well, he'll be out in 3 years, but he'll turn it around. He'll get them to win. He didn't make 3 years, one, and two, he didn't turn around anything. So here we are. And, I know that the Flyers are somewhat better than what they were when he took over. Don't get me wrong, but from the outside looking in, and that's why I'm happy to have you on today's show. Of course, we got a lot to get to. Larry, great to have you. How we doing, sir?
Doing well, Sean. Good to be back with you as always. Big news this morning. Obviously, opening day for the Phils is taking a lot of the priority on the good side of things, but one not so good thing with John Tortorella being fired this morning by the Philadelphia Flyers. Have to say, I mean, I thought the writing was on the wall a little bit with how kind of demoralizing the season has been for the Flyers. I remember when you and I talked at the beginning of the season, we always try to find some type of excitement, something to get pumped up about. I thought they had a really positive first half of the season. A couple trades happened. They traded away Joel Farabee, Scott Lawton, Morgan Frost, and it seemed like they were just sellers at the market, and things have just kind of went downhill ever since. And now they're really fighting to right now I think they have the fifth worst record in the NHL, and they're not going to catch the San Jose Sharks. But yeah, it's just been a disappointing season. I was excited about the Tortorella hiring when it happened, just because I thought this is a guy that's been around the block. He's been around for a while. He's won a Stanley Cup. He can get this team playing at a high level. And for most of the time, I thought they did do that. They just got outclassed or outskilled sometimes in games. But I think something had to change. Danny Briere made the change this morning, and we see how it goes over the next. I mean, they have like a week and a half left, 2 weeks left in the season, but I'm curious to see how this team goes from here, and what we'll be talking about next fall when the new season gets underway.
Yeah, it's, look, there's not much we can do about it right now. And I just don't know if the hiring of a new coach is going to be the change that Flyers fans want, but at least it'll be a start and something different. And that's always something that's good for the beginning of a season. But man, it's got to be depressing to be a Flyers faithful at this point in time. And as I am a Flyers fan, but I will tell you, I haven't tuned in much this year. Like this is where I'm at. Maybe it's we get older, these things start to change. But I look at the Sixers, and they're a poorly run organization making terrible decisions. Of course, they've been a little bit hamstrung as far as with the injuries are concerned. I'm not giving them my time. I'm just not. There's other things that I have going on in my life, in my world, and other sports that are far more attractive to me to give my time than to tune in and watch a Philadelphia sports team get beat up, lose 4-0, 4-1, or the Sixers just completely tanking. And so that's where we're at with both organizations. It's sad, to be honest. But again, Flyers, I was excited. I guess you could say I was excited. I was happy about the hire of Torts, but was not really believing anything that was going to be a significant change. I mean, all in all, the guy was hired, and he was like, "Yeah, I got nothing to build off of." There was a John Clark clip that's floating around in a timeline when he was hired, and essentially was asking him, like, "Do you see something that you could build off of here? Is there like a person?" He's like, "No." So here we are. Mitchkov's a bright spot. Couturier's been here forever. I don't know. Other than that, what else do the Flyers have?
Yeah, like you said, I mean, Mitchkov has been one of the few bright spots this season, and he's a young player. He's still, I think, at some point going to hit that period of a young player where you go through some growing pains and maybe don't play your best hockey. I mean, we've been kind of fortunate that he's here, or else this team would be a lot worse this season. They did sign Travis Konechny to a long deal, which I think he'll eventually be the captain of this team when Couturier retires. Couturier, I think at a point he's going to finish his career here. I don't see him getting moved anytime soon. Konechny has a big deal, so I expect him to be here at least maybe half of that, and then kind of like a Claude Giroux situation where eventually maybe you try to get him to a winner if the Flyers aren't in that spot. I think it's just been, boils down to a lot of things, right? I think John Tortorella could really only coach what he can coach. And this team, again, they were sellers at the market. They traded Scott Laughton. They traded Joel Farabee and Morgan Frost. And I actually like, Morgan Frost as a player. Farabee kind of took some steps back in terms of his progression as a player. So I could see that being on the move. Laughton's been here for a long time and was a good player for this team. But again, I think he deserves a chance to be a winner. So yeah, I mean, I think goaltending continues to be an issue, right? Ever since Carter Hart has was let go, and obviously I think that was the right move for the organization at the time, to let him go, but they haven't really solidified that number one goalie spot. It's been kind of a revolving door of goaltenders between Samuel Ersson, Ivan Fedotov, and Alexei Kolosev. So they got to try to pick one of these guys to build off of, and if none of these guys are it, then they got to look elsewhere. Defensively, I think they have a solid defensive unit, but they need some improvement. And then overall, I think the scoring wise now, I mean, Michkov's going to be, I think, your number one guy, but there's also going to be, just some, you're going to need more players. So, it's going to be a busy summer, and kind of curious to see what they do from here.
To say the least. Yeah, you look at the roster and there's not much to work with. Like, and I'm not going to pretend like I'm the X's and O's freak here that I know everything about hockey. I don't, but it's just been a brutal season. And in the times that I have tuned in, it's like I said, 3-0 at the end of one. I work down there. I work with a lot of people that are in the same team from the Wings and the Flyers, and man, it's a lot of good people down there, a lot of people that are hard workers and just are begging for a team that's competitive, a team that could at least flirt with the playoff run, right? And it's just not happening, and it is unacceptable. But at the same time, like, the Flyers this isn't the 70s, man. We've heard this 100,000 times already. This ain't the 70s, man. And I know that there's been some other runs for the Flyers that they've had some success over the years, over the decades, but it just has been completely absent over the past few seasons. So here we are, on to another coach, and I see that people are already throwing names out there, and I don't really care to get into that. Again, Briere needs to look. He's going to find his guy, because ultimately his job's on the line now. Now his time officially starts, right? I would assume that, like, the clock is officially running on Briere, so he's got to make something happen. Hopefully that they're able to get somebody in here from a free agent, but ultimately, we'll see where they go as far as a coach is concerned. With that being said, let's go big picture. Larry, you join me here weekly, and I want to talk some big picture as far as hockey is concerned, getting us caught up. We're coming down the home stretch, about 71, 72 games played already. Of course, they play 82, so 10 games until we get into the playoffs. Maple Leafs and the Capitals at the top. The Winnipeg Jets, who clinched a playoff spot already, and Vegas Golden Knights currently all lead the divisions at this point in time in the East and the West Conference. I guess the big question I would have is, why is the Ovechkin deal not getting bigger push? My goodness, they're in first place. I think that should be leading off SportsCenter. It should be talked about more than ever, and I'm hearing about it dribs and drabs as far as him being the all-time goal scorer in NHL history, passing off the great one. So here they are. Man, the Caps playing at a high level, and Ovechkin doing it the way he's been doing it. There's nobody that's been bothered by this push here, and it's pretty cool to see that. But I would like to hear a little bit more about Ovechkin breaking this record, because obviously this is a big damn deal.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's been obviously one of the big talking points, heading into the season was, could Alex Ovechkin potentially get near the great one, Wayne Gretzky, and his goal scoring record. And hats off to Ovechkin, man. He's what, 40, 41 now, years old, still playing at a high level, staying injury free with his style of play. I think he's had to change his style of play a little bit, because I remember coming into the league and, as a younger age, I mean, this guy was flying around. He was throwing checks. He was getting in on the forecheck and everything. He's kind of taken a little step back from that. I think, as you have to do when you're 40 years old, you're not going to be flying into checks or hammering people like you used to. But I mean, Ovechkin just has showed no signs of tapering off. He's continued to score consistently, continued to score at a high level. And I think the Capitals have obviously benefited from that, because nobody really expected the Capitals to be where they're at right now this season. 103 points, first in the league, first in the Metro. They have 23 or more wins at home and on the road, 8-1-1 in their last 10. I think they've just been awesome. And I think when you have a guy like that, like Ovechkin, who's, once in a generation type talent in goal scorer, he's going to, playing with a guy like that is obviously an amazing opportunity, especially as a young player. But then you sprinkle in some veterans as well. I think it's all gone right for them. I would love to see Ovechkin break this record. I think he will. He's got 2 weeks left. I think he needs 6 goals to break it, 5 to tie. And like I said, with them winning and how they're winning games, and they're just kind of just obliterating teams, they're plus 75 on the goal difference. I expect him to break that, and we'll see what happens come playoff time, because ultimately when you're the number one team in the league, everyone's, there's always that curse of winning the President's Trophy, and can you actually make a run to the Stanley Cup? We've seen it with the Maple Leafs. We've seen it with the Capitals in the past. We've seen it with Tampa Bay Lightning. So it's going to be some pressure, but I think that Ovechkin has had a great season. It's been awesome. I think if he breaks this record, which I think he will, but if he does, I expect him to retire at the end of the season, because I mean, he's already achieved so much in the game, and what more is it to him, unless he wants to be like Jaromir Jagr and play until he's mid-40s.
Yeah, that could be possibly the case. He's 39 years old at this point in time, September 17th. What's he, 6? He needs 6 more goals. Is that the case? I think it's 6.
6 to break, 5 to tie. Yep.
There you go. Playoffs count, correct? Like, the goals are goals, right? Or is this regular season only?
Mm-hmm. No, it counts. Yeah, all
Yeah.
Gretzky's numbers were regular season and
Yeah.
playoffs. And I mean, Gretzky obviously was just a point machine, right? I think, what is it? If you take away all of Gretzky's goals, he's still the all-time point getter in NHL history, which just shows you how amazing he was and how amazing those Edmonton Oilers teams were, because, he won 4 Stanley Cups and probably could have even won a couple more if he had stayed in Edmonton, wasn't traded to LA.
Right about that. Little history lesson by Larry Henry Jr. I like that. So yeah, Ovechkin is the big deal. And look, man, who knows? Yeah, those Russians are crazy. He could continue to play, but he will get that record. It should be a bigger deal, but we know how this works. Anyways, from the wagering department, Capitals 11-1 to win the Stanley Cup this year. That'd be a hell of a deal. Now, if they did win the Stanley Cup, he could potentially hang it up. I could see that happening a little bit more than them losing in the playoffs, him getting the record, and then him riding off into the sunset. If they do win it all, possibly that could be the case. But Stars are 6-1, Panthers plus 650, Edmonton Oilers 8-1, Avalanche 9-1, Caps 11-1, Lightning 11-1, Hurricanes 11-1, and then Vegas and Toronto and Winnipeg all 12-1. That's pretty tight right there. And then we get a drop off to the Kings at 20-1. So out of those 10 teams, excuse me, Larry, from 12-1 all the way up into the Dallas Stars, from the Winnipeg Jets to the Stars, is there one that you have your eye on a little bit more than others as far as potentially making a run and getting through the playoffs and ultimately lifting Lord Stanley?
Yeah, I think one of those teams is the Winnipeg Jets. I think they've been consistent throughout the whole season. They started off the season on a blistering pace. Then they kind of hit that spell where they came back down to earth a little bit, kind of pulled back in the Western Conference, but they've continued the second half of the season to be just as good as the Washington Capitals. They have 102 points, plus 77 goal difference, 7-3 in their last 10. And I think the best thing about them as a team is they are one of the best teams in terms goaltending teams in the league. And I think when you get to the playoffs, you need to have consistent, good goaltending. We've seen it in the past with these teams, like the Washington Capitals, like the Tampa Bay Lightning, where you rule through everybody, you score a boatload of goals, and then kind of those weaknesses that you had in the regular season pop out in the playoffs, and it's obviously at a larger scale. I think the Winnipeg Jets right now, their goals against per game is 2.38, which is the best in the league. Connor Hellebuck, who was in the Four Nations tournament, I thought he had a really good Four Nations in that. He's been awesome this season. So I think if they can ride Hellebuck to the playoffs and get this consistent goal scoring that they've had throughout the season, they're a force to be reckoned with. But like you said, I think it's really tight in terms of just all these teams, right? Washington, Winnipeg, Dallas, Vegas has the number one power play in the league, 30% on the power play. Carolina, Toronto. I think Florida is going to be a threat once they get Matthew Tkachuk back from injury. He's out the rest of the regular season. But obviously that's a really good Florida team, and they've won it recently, so they know what it takes to get there. It's going to be a fun watch when the playoffs come around. I'm excited to see all these matchups, and also excited that we're not going to have to witness the Flyers get bounced out in the first round of the playoffs either. But it's going to be fun, man. It's going to be good. If I had to pick a team, I like the Winnipeg Jets.
All right, is there something you have your eye on coming down the home stretch with 10 games remaining other than the Ovechkin deal, breaking Gretzky's all-time goal-scoring record in NHL history? Of course, taking a look at some of the teams at the top of the charts as far as winning it all. Is there anything else you have your eye on? Is there a team that could potentially make a playoff push, a little late charge, somebody that could potentially shake things up and be, a nuisance to one of these top dogs once the playoff series come around? Where you at?
Yeah, I guess two main things I'm looking at is obviously the playoff races for a couple of the divisions. The Atlantic Division has been, unlike the Metro, where the Caps have kind of run away with it. The Atlantic is really tight right now. You have the Toronto Maple Leafs at 89 points. You have the Florida Panthers at 89 points, and then you have the Tampa Bay Lightning at 87. A lot can change in the last 2 weeks between those three teams, and obviously not winning the division isn't the most important thing, but to a lot of these teams, getting that confidence boost and winning a division certainly helps. All three of those teams I expect to be, in the playoffs and be a threat. So that'll be a fun watch down the stretch. Looking at the east side, the eastern side of things, New York Rangers on the outside right now. Nobody really expected that before the season. They are 1 point out of the final wild card spot, which is held by the Montreal Canadiens. I think the Canadiens getting into the playoffs, and also right now the two teams, Ottawa and Montreal, holding the two wild card spots, which again, I don't think a lot of people predicted. You have teams like the Rangers, teams like the Boston Bruins, teams like the Pittsburgh Penguins all out of the playoff mix right now. With the amount of talented guys those teams have, the Sidney Crosbys, the Mika Zibanejad's, the Artemi Panarins, not being in the playoffs is pretty crazy. And then just wanted to close it out on the West. I think Winnipeg, obviously number one in the West. You have Vegas in the mix there. I think, again, looking at the wild card spots is interesting. You have the Blues holding the last spot right now, but you also have Vancouver, Calgary, and even Utah still alive in the mix. So it'll be fun to watch it down the stretch and see who can kind of get over that red line before the end of the season.
Tell you what, you got my eye, you got my attention on the Winnipeg. There's a lot of money to be made on them, a lot of value there with the Winnipeg Jets. 6-1 to win the West. We already went over what they are as far as Stanley Cup champions are concerned and futures on DraftKings. You take a look at some of the other potential playoff matchups that they have coming up here. Something to keep your eye on. Winnipeg Jets. I think once we get around to playoff time, I might have to tie in a little play for the Winnipeg Jets and see if we get that Larry Henry Jr. magic here on the Daily Ticket. All right, let's keep it moving off of the NHL, and let's talk a little MLB opening day, Lair. I see you got the Phil's cap on. You ready to go? Of course, the Phil's shirt as well. My man, he's got the orange and the black Phillies jersey. He's got it all, man. He's back. He's ready to roll here. Opening day for the Fightins. It's a tough division, though, Lair. Let's start there as far as division is concerned. I think the Braves, what they were able to do last year with 89 wins, dealing with all those injuries, it was a nightmare of a season, but yet at the end of it, they won 89 games. So it's tough for me to overlook them here this year. But pitching rotation, better for the Phillies a little bit in my mind. If they can deliver, that's going to be the difference for me, for my money. Pitching has to be somewhat better. And I know Wheeler pitched his butt off last year, but as a whole, top to bottom, 1 through 5, if the Phillies want to improve, and they didn't spend any money this offseason, they didn't change anything this offseason. They added Max Kepler, and that's about it, unless I'm forgetting something. I don't believe I am. What should we expect to be different this year? I just think that the starting rotation needs to be better. And if they get that, then this team will improve. But this team won a bunch of games last year, won the division, came up short in the playoffs. I'm having a hard time pitch the idea that this is going to be different this year, because we know the mean Dodgers will be waiting some way, somehow in the playoffs. But when it comes to the Phillies, how will they improve in your mind from last year to this year?
It's a tough one, man. How they will improve. Obviously, I think having that that familiarity in the lineup is a big thing. Keeping those guys together, right? Bryce and Castellanos, Schwarber, Turner. I think there's so much flipping in baseball every year. So many guys on the move. I think the Phillies, obviously, keeping those guys together is important. I mean, I didn't expect any of them to go anyway, but just the fact that they have those guys that they can lean on, a guy that could win a game for you in the ninth inning with the bat, or a big home run late in the game, I think is going to be huge. One thing like you said, I agree with you with the rotation. I think it has to be better from, top to bottom. I know Wheeler's obviously the number one. You have Nola, you have Sanchez, who got his money last season. And then you bring in the other guys as well. I'm hoping we see a good season out of Luzardo. I think there's so much potential there out of him and bringing him in. And then obviously, I think everyone's concerned about is Taijuan Walker, and will he actually take a step forward this season, especially with the amount of money he's making. If he can do that, I think this team could, definitely take it to that next level if the rotation is as advertised. Another thing I'm looking at is the back end of the bullpen. I think Alvarado has had a great spring training. Was able to see him throw an inning down in Florida, and I mean, he just looks in shape. I know he lost some weight. I think that's huge. We know he throws hard. It's just about placement at that point. And can Jordan Romano play a big part in this bullpen, right? Get back to that Jordan Romano of what I think it was back-to-back All-Star years in 21-22 before or 22-23 before he had some issues in 24. So if he can do that and this team can kind of become maybe pitching first and hitting second, I'm okay with that, as long as you are consistent. You can, beat some of the big teams. I think this division is going to be really good. You have the Mets. The Mets obviously improved a little bit, well, more than a little bit with Soto. And then you have the Braves bringing their guys back as well. Strider coming back this season, Acuna coming back, Albies coming back, and they got Jerks and Profar from the Padres. And I wouldn't sleep on the Nationals. I don't think they're going to be in the mix
Ooh.
I don't think they're going to be in the mix for the division, but I think they're a team that can, cause some trouble against the big teams like the Phillies, the Mets, and the Braves. And, we have them to start off this new season. So it'll be big excited, but, I do think the Phillies are going to win the division. I still like them too. But it's going to be tough, man. I think and especially if something goes wrong, if there's an injury, if there's something happens with one of the key players, then they could be in for a tough ride. But overall, I'm confident in winning the division this season.
Zach Wheeler on the bump this afternoon, 405, minus 155 favorites here on DraftKings Sportsbook. Sevens are total. Chilly weather down there. Mackenzie Gore, the lefty for the Nats, going head-to-head. Interesting spot there. Game 1 for the Fightins. I know that everybody is on Paul Skeens. Let's have a quick look at Paul Skeens' numbers. It's only minus 148 for the money line. Strikeouts 6.5. I read that 99% of the bets at DraftKings Sportsbook were on the over. So wouldn't shock me if he throws 6 strikeouts and everybody comes up just a tad short on Paul Skeens. Anyways, baseball's here. We'll be breaking it all down. Larry, get us out of here on this one. You're always updating us as far as the world of soccer is concerned. We got issues with Team USA. What the hell is going on with the U.S. men's national team?
Yeah, a lot of worry right now for the U.S. men's national team. Not a great CONCACAF Nations League window, losing the semifinal to Panama and then losing the third place match to Canada. Yeah, definitely a worrying with the World Cup only a year away. Hopefully, Pochettino can kind of turn it around this summer with the Gold Cup. That's really their last meaningful competition before the World Cup is here in North America. But yeah, I think we just need overall better leadership in this team, right? Christian Pulisic, he's the star of this team, but hopefully we can see a little bit more out of him being a leader to this group. Needs consistent scoring from these guys in terms of the number 9 position. Who's going to be the number 9? There's a couple guys that have been out because of injury. A couple guys have just only got back into training. But I think there's still a lot of positions that are going to need to be solidified before the World Cup comes. And but it was definitely disappointing. I know a lot of the former players, Clint Dempsey, Tony Meola, have had a lot to say about how the way they went out of this tournament, and just very disappointing because I think a lot of the fans had high hopes of them repeating as tournament winners, but wasn't to be. And credit to Mexico for winning it, but it's not a good spot for the national team. Luckily, they have a year to kind of get things finalized, but whenever you come off a couple losses, it's not looking good.
Got to cross our fingers again here. We can't get lucky. Good grief. We'll see what happens. Not the best weekend. There's definitely some panic going on for sure. Larry, great to catch up with you here. A midweek edition on the Daily Ticket. We got a lot going on, of course, with the NHL playoff. Continue to pepper that. And, of course, MLB doing a bang-up job still representing the folks over at the Athletic. I know you're doing more NFL, more football stuff over there. What do you got cooking?
Yeah, just a little bit of everything. March Madness this weekend. I know you're big on that. Did that a little bit of that last weekend. We got March Madness all weekend long, the men's and the women's competition, doing some stuff for the Athletics. So, but yeah, it should be good, man. This tournament's been really good to watch so far. Is your bracket still alive? You're fine. Who do you got winning it all?
I got Duke winning it all, so I'm doing all right there. I got, I had all the 1 seeds going to where we're at right now. Actually, no, I lied to you. No, I'm lying to you. I had Auburn losing, so Auburn making it to the Sweet 16 was not in my bracket. But other than that, I got Duke. Look, I will be straight up with you. Wagering, put my bracket to the side. Who cares? Wagering, it's been difficult. I had a decent day on Sunday, but okay on Thursday, bad Friday, bad Saturday, and then Sunday started off with the loss and was like, dude, this is brutal right now. But I was able to bounce back, ran like 4 straight on Sunday afternoon into the evening, and then ended up going 6-2 on Sunday with my losses being Florida team total and then Oregon coughing it up at the end there. But a little less than 0 at this point in time. We'll see what happens. We've got a couple good games tonight, man. Got to keep swinging, keep fighting. Big spreads, a lot to choose from. So hopefully we got a few good plays, winning plays. That's what it's all about.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. A lot of good games this weekend, and I'll be on Tennessee, Kentucky. I think that's my game of the weekend. I'm excited for that. Should be a good rivalry game. I had Tennessee winning the whole thing. They've had a couple tough ones right against UCLA. Can they get past Kentucky? I think if they can do that, then they
Oh, by the
could
way,
run the
Kentucky beat them
table.
twice already this year. Beat them twice. It was
Right.
like, wait, and they're 4.5-point dogs in this one. Very interesting number. That game has my attention from that standpoint.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's been a good tournament overall. Like you said, not great on the betting side of things, but hopefully we turn it around this weekend, right?
That's the way we got to think about it. Come on, baby. Got to think positive. Larry Henry Jr., you're the best. Good luck on all your plays. We'll continue to read you over at the Athletic. And be sure to follow Larry at lhenry019 on all things socials. Larry, great to get you on today. Sucks that Tortorella got fired, but on to the next one. Maybe we'll be talking about Flyers in the playoffs next year. We'll see. But always a pleasure here, sir.
Appreciate it, Sean. Thanks, buddy. Go Phils.
Go Phils. There he is, Larry Henry Jr., keeping it moving on the Daily Ticket. More after this.